Hello everyone, so this is Lala and today I'm going to be discussing and reviewing the Challenge Season 8, which is also known as the Challenge Inferno. And this season really kicked it up a notch compared to a lot of the other seasons. I feel like they finally got the format right with this season, though they had it right last season as well, technically. And there wasn't some of those awkward formatting flaws or rough patches like there were on the Battle of the Sexes and Battle of the Seasons, so things ran very smoothly here, though there was a huge fear factor element with a lot of the dailies and the eliminations, which I'm kind of mixed on, to be honest. Some of them are pretty interesting, but others were kind of just lame and really just didn't feel like the challenge. Not early challenge and not later challenge either. So I'm kind of mixed on the eliminations. What I did notice with this season is that the cast was a lot smaller compared to all of the other seasons. I think last season's cast might be a bit larger, but it was definitely a lot smaller than Battle of the Sexes and Battle of the Seasons. And I like this choice because you really got to focus on the people at hand, and there really wasn't anyone who was giving an under the radar or an invisible edit like there were on many other seasons that I reviewed earlier on. Honestly, outside of CT, the newbies really weren't good, and I feel like this is the weakest newbie bunch so far from the post-Battle of the Seasons challenge seasons in this era so far. In general, the drama was really good here, and you can tell that they really started focusing on the drama, and a lot of the drama in this season has been quoted and referenced several times in the year since, even up until the modern day, where they do those challenge montages or whatever, and they refer to many moments from the Inferno. So in that case, it's really great. And you saw a lot of people that were on that season return on this season, so there's a lot of continued storylines, and I like that continuity there that wasn't as emphasized in some of the prior seasons. Though I feel like they divided this cast based on who's going to be on this season and who's going to be on Battle of the Sexes, to kind of like what they did with Battle of the Sexes and the Gauntlet. I don't know if those seasons were filmed at around the same time. That's why they kind of split the veterans at around the time. Overall, I do think the season is a massive improvement over the last few, and let's just get right to it. So we start off the season with Trishelle and Mike learning that they broke up right after filming last season and they're currently on bad terms. Also, nothing went on between Veronica and Abram after last season either, so they're not really engaging in anything and there's no feeling romantically or sexually there either. CT is one of the newbies and he claims that he has changed since his real world season regarding anger and violence, which we will see throughout the show that it is false. And Katie still hates Veronica after last season. Kendall needs money to fuel her acting career, and Cyrus is adapting to the new challenge, while Julie has a band and wants redemption after being bored or booted on her last season early for no reason. Julie not taking accountability that she was booted because she's doing some shiesty-ish behind the scenes. But that's neither here nor there at this point. And Timmy is also back after a few seasons off. Dave Mira is the new host and introduces the Inferno, where the first challenge determines who goes into the Inferno. Actually, no. They win the first challenge, and whoever wins that challenge gets the money into their pot. And the second challenge is for the lifesaver, so they can either save the people who are nominated or just leave it as is. So it's kind of like a veto. But the lifesaver isn't completely immune. Cyrus is being treated as an old man because he's 31 to 32, and that is so ridiculous because people who are 31 and 32 are on the younger end of the era for seasons. And they never treat Mark like this on the challenge either, though you see this similar treatment with Beth. Anyways, the first challenge is Grope the Rope, where you have to pull themselves, or where they have to pull themselves in between two buildings, and we see Julie trying to take out Veronica's safety harness to knock her off, which is awful and is way too dangerous, and she kind of plays it off like it was, oh, not a big deal, but yeah, that's a very serious deal, and Veronica is very pissed off, and everyone's trying to tell Julie to stop. The Road Rulers win the challenge. Timmy and Jeremy are voted into the Inferno from Road Rules, and Cyrus and Ace are voted in by the real world. Jeremy and Cyrus are chosen by the other team to be in the Inferno, and where the individual scores for the challenge are revealed. And Cyrus snaps because he wasn't anywhere near being the worst performer, but they just put that on him because of his age. I also forgot to mention earlier that Holly and Ace are dating at this point. Another thing that I forgot to mention is that Piggy was on the cast this season and she arrived with everyone else. And you can see her in a few shots with the others, so if you blink, you'll miss it. But she left for undisclosed reasons and was replaced with Christina, and Piggy has never been on the challenge since. The Lifesaver Challenge is called Bird Feeder, where you have to transfer worms into a fake bird's mouth using your own mouth. Honestly, what a repulsive challenge, but apparently many of the challenges were inspired by Fear Factor this season. The real world wins the challenge. They are still getting money in their final amounts this season, and the two people who get the lifesavers are Darrell and Cyrus. Cyrus is thinking about putting Ace into the elimination, since Cyrus is obviously going to save himself, and the team is thinking that as well, since he was the other person who was nominated, so it's just fair all around. Ace is taking things very personally, and once the switch happens, Ace and Jeremy takes part in the Bug Helmet elimination, which is another Fear Factor inspired challenge. And I don't even think Ace did this elimination for 5 seconds before bulging and jumping into the pool. He bolted out of there. I think my eyes were starting to get glossy for a second, and then literally once I started getting focused in my eyes again, he was gone. I was like, what the fuck? The elimination was that quick. Anyways, I think this has to be the quickest elimination in challenge history, and Cora confronts him for flopping in the elimination, showing that he really didn't want to be there and didn't have what it takes. I am shocked that Ace came back a few more times after this. He didn't show much personality, wasn't in any drama, he wasn't competitive or strategic, and his showmatch was also boring. I don't know if it's because I don't know much about real world history, but maybe the Real World Paris was a very popular season, so they wanted to give that cast many more chances on the challenge. I don't know if that's why he came back so many times, but based off of this season, he gave nothing. Maybe he'll be more interesting in his future seasons, but he kind of has to if he was on 3 more flagship seasons and 2 All-Star seasons, and my first experience watching him was on All-Stars 4, where I somewhat remembered him. Trishelle talks about how she's undateable, and Mike talks about how he can never be with her again, so they are still on bad terms, since she made out with an ex. Trishelle is annoyed that Mike is hanging out with Kendall, despite her cheating on him with Adam, which we learned during that Somewhat reunion thingy that they put last season after the finale. And Trishelle ends up arguing with Mallory and Coral, the latter who has her friend's back, and Trishelle tries to snatch Coral's arm, and Coral has better restraint to not handle her like I and most other people would have if they were in that position with someone else. Anyway, Trishelle just completely shows her ass at the bar. The challenge is called Wreck and Roll, where they have to smash everything in the room. I remember Total Drama Action did this, though this was about 5 years after the challenge did it, obviously, and this kind of competition is something that they do in a lot of reality TV shows in general. And the heaviest amount of stuff crushed, as they have to weigh everything they crush, will win. Road Rules end up winning the challenge, which is common for the Road Rules versus Real World seasons, as we have seen so far and as we will see throughout the next few seasons. Katie volunteers to be in the Inferno for the Road Rulers, and Holly ends up volunteering for it as well. Trishelle and Leah are sent into the Inferno by the Real Worlders, and Trishelle is pissed off since she did the best out of the woman today and claims that Coral is being manipulative. But Coral and Mike are still not over Trishelle, threatening to beat their asses in the club. He tells Trishelle that she should apologize to him, and she's over the both of them playing very personally, and the ex-couple argue about hating the other one flirting and kissing with other people, and it's just nauseating to watch. The Real World chooses to nominate Holly, since Katie will throw every challenge for the Real World and make Road Rules lose, and the Road Rules choose to nominate Trishelle. Julie does not agree with Trishelle going into the Inferno, and both of the women trash Coral, as well as Coral's influence on the team. Trishelle is not going to stay silent this season like she did last season, so she is definitely ready to confront Coral, though I don't recall her being that silent regarding Coral last season either. Anyways, the Lifesaver Challenge is climbing the wall, where they have to climb a wall hanging in the sea. Katie does not want to climb the wall, but she's convinced to do so by Holly. Road Rules wins this, with Timmy and TT gaining the lifesavers from the challenge. Trishelle tells Coral that she blames her about going into the Inferno, and Coral said that she was threatened on camera, and she should be blamed, well, that she shouldn't be blamed for Trishelle going into the Inferno, since Trishelle just did it to herself. Julie tries to defend Trishelle, but is immediately shut down and told to stay out of it by Coral, and you'll see the two of them argue bit by bit throughout the season, up until their huge blowout. The elimination is Chilo counter, where they have to eat and drink spicy foods. This elimination is kind of lame, and I have nothing else to really say about it. But Holly does beat Trishelle. After the elimination, since this is a time where the eliminated contestant can stay for a few hours to pack their stuff and say their goodbyes, Mike and Trishelle make up and end on good terms, so that storyline is wrapped in a nice little bow. Trishelle definitely is not likable, but I do like the drama that she caused with Mike and Coral in the season, but it was definitely starting to wear thin, and there wasn't much else for her to do in the season. It takes her about 8 years to return, and I don't know about other details regarding this, so I do know that she was on Battle of the Reality Stars, and I don't know a whole lot about that, but that can't be why she was missing for 8 years. Anyways, I do see why she doesn't come back for a while, with an early boot and no other storyline. Mike and Kendall are getting a lot closer, and the Real Worlders realize that they need to come up with a different plan for how they handle their Inferno, since they already lost 2 people. The next challenge is called Disco Domino Derby, where you have to line up a bunch of dominoes and knock them over, but they all end up dressing in 70s clothing in the challenge, which is something that they wouldn't do in the modern day, at least pertaining to challenges. The challenge really wasn't all that, but it's definitely a lot more simplistic than what we're used to, but the Real World ends up winning the challenge. The Real Worlders decide to vote in 2 men, where David and Mike end up volunteering to go into the Inferno, where Abram volunteers for the Road Rules, and Shane is into going in, which causes Jeremy to end up volunteering, which Holly thinks that it isn't fair that Jeremy had to volunteer, but Shane is glad since he never got to volunteer and he's never going to volunteer, and Jeremy already won an elimination for them in the past, so Holly doesn't like that. Jeremy and Mike end up being chosen to go into the Inferno by the opposite team. Another episode opens up with Kendall and Mike showman's content, and he ends up talking to his friend who used to date Kendall, and he's hearing what happened because Trishelle told the friend right after she got booted. So there's a bit of awkwardness between the showmans, since she does not want to ruin his friendship, he doesn't want to ruin his friendship, and it's all just a mess. In general, Kendall and Mike aren't that interesting of a showman, though I guess they're messier than Trishelle and Mike were last season. Anyways, the next lifesaver challenge is called Balls In, where half of the team uses exercise bike or an exercise bicycle to get the ball out of a tube, but Coral uses physics with the water to stop a lot of the road rulers. The Real World wins the challenge with the strategy. CT and Veronica win the lifesavers for themselves, and we move on to Katie's relationship with the Real Worlders being very strained. Katie's relationship with the Real Worlders is causing her relationship with the Road Rulers to be very strained, and it's pissing off her team. And they aren't reacting well to it at all. So Jeremy kind of speaks to Katie about how she needs to support the team and how they're both underdogs. So he's kind of a motivational element in this regard. The elimination is Human Candelabra, hopefully I said that correctly, where they have to hold both handles to each side without lowering it, and Jeremy easily loses this to Mike, though you would think that he would win since Mike has much bigger arms, meaning more weight to it. Jeremy gives a positive motivating speech to the road rulers before leaving, and the episode ends with Kendall and Mike kissing. So I do see that Jeremy comes back for another season, and I do think he did enough to warrant that from his performance here. He wasn't a bad competitor, and had enough of an engaging and likable personality that doesn't make him as forgettable as some of the early boots, or even some of the people who were booted later on in the early seasons, or in the freshman seasons. At the same time, he offers as much as he was going to offer in the season, so I'm fine with him going here. Julie talks about how she is not intimidated by Coral anymore, and she's willing to stand up to her, though Coral doesn't really see why people think that she's intimidating, but that's their problem, not hers. And that's such a Coral thing to say. The conflict between Julie and Coral is definitely heating up, And we move on to the challenge, which is called the Ultimate Saturn Road Trip, where you have to climb a mesh to grab a bag, bring it down, put it in a car, and drive off. And honestly, it's kind of just a basic and unmemorable challenge. Cora didn't perform the best in the challenge, and Julie is starting to chip at her, causing a mini fight between them while the challenge is happening. Road Rules win the challenge, and two women, need to go up. Road Rules votes in Katie and Christina, knowing that the real worlders will never send in Katie, and Cora volunteers herself into the Inferno, and Mallory kind of decides that she will do the same thing as well. Julie calls out Cora for doing this since she and everyone else knows that Cora will be saved and she doesn't have to volunteer for the next round for the women. Julie picks a fight with Cora about this, and Mallory is definitely iffy about this, causing Cora to tell Mallory to do whatever she wants and she shouldn't be pressured into doing it if she doesn't want to do it. And the real world team is just a mess at this point. Cora, Mallory, Katie, and Christina are voted into the Inferno, where the Road Rulers vote in Christina. And the real worlders were right about this pertaining to strategy. And the Road Rulers decide to keep Cora and vote in Mallory, since Cora lost for the real world last season in the final, and they keep on mentioning the spider bug incident. So yeah, Cora's rep and ego definitely took a hit with that. Julie asks Cora if she has a problem with her, and they argue because they claim that they've been nothing but nice to one another throughout the season, and it's all just BS, and they're BSing each other. Cora doesn't get why she isn't allowed to be moody, but the others are given graces for it, and Julie thinks that Cora talks like a child. I don't know if Cora's trying to hint at a racial bias with this, due to the angry black woman trope that is often put on a black woman whenever they show any type of emotion. So that's just an interesting tidbit there. We get some backstory about Mallory and Christina's friendship, where apparently they met at the VMAs and they've been BFFs ever since, so they didn't come from the same reality TV season just from this description. And it's clear that they're showing us this because one of them are going home. Anyways, Don't Yank My Chain is the next challenge, where you hold your hand up over your head, where there's a bucket of gross stuff that's in it, and if you move your hands, that gross stuff will fall on your head or someone else's head, depending on where the bucket is. The Road Rulers, mainly Timmy, comes up with a plan to throw the challenge so they can give it to Christina and she will put Katie in her place. But Christina ends up telling Katie about this since she wants to, quote-unquote, win honestly, which is just very dumb as hell in my opinion. Anyways, Road Rules wins yet again, though we have Mike and Veronica winning the lifesavers from the challenge. The elimination this time is called Noise Pollution, where they have to listen to a bunch of annoying music and sounds for 2 hours. And this is very Fear Factor influenced. They go to the sudden death round, where they have to do the same thing on a small block that they're standing on, and Mallory loses the elimination to Christina. I really don't have anything to say about Mallory. She didn't do much of note at all throughout the season, and I barely remember anything of her outside of her final 2 episodes, and even then I'll forget about all that once I have distance from it. I definitely see why she's a one and done, since she just offers nothing to the table, and is inherently forgettable. Cora decides to make Abram a sandwich, and she ends up licking the sandwich that she made for him, and he eats it without noticing anything being weird or off about it. The challenge really is something that doesn't fit the challenge, but we do see stuff like CT wearing a thong to sell stuff, though the Road Rulers notice that Katie is having a comeback. This is more like an Amazing Race challenge to me than anything else. Road Rules wins the challenge, unshockingly to no one, and we have rock, paper, scissors to see whom out of Timmy and Abram are going to go into the Inferno, and David volunteers to go in since he fucked up on the challenge, and CT is nominated with them since he hasn't been nominated yet. The nominees are Abram and Shane and David and CT, where the real world save Abram and the Road Rulers save CT, so David and Shane are going to the Inferno. Holly is defending Katie to Darrell, and we see Abram cutting a mohawk for the first time in his life, though he's kind of just known for that look now, so that's kind of interesting. So Darrell wants to look good and tan for a woman, In my note, I have Holly, but I'm pretty sure he got into a showmance with Leah. So I don't know what I was doing when I was writing this. But anyways, he is into a woman who I presume is Leah, and he wants to get with her. CT talks about knowing David since their Boston days, and it seems like it was pre-reality TV, which is always nice. The challenge is called Bounty Time, where they are hand tied to their back and they have to get out of it while being pushed down on a bounty. Katie is so panicked as she waits over 10 minutes to do the challenge, and Leah has a huge panic attack to the point where she is put into a hospital and tubes end up going up her nose, and she's literally wheeled out of the destination, and she is not able to compete in the next few challenges because production doesn't want to take the risk. So Road Rules wins the challenge, with CT and Holly getting the lifesavers, and we see CT talking with David about potentially using it on him, which is why I assume they showed them talking about their Boston connection pre-reality TV. So the elimination is called Don't Touch Your Cookies, and CT uses the lifesaver on David, who is a weak eater and goes into elimination in his place. So they have 10 minutes to eat their cookies and then spin for 10 minutes, where it will get faster as more time goes on, and then they have to drink milk as well. Shane is really pissed off because he felt like he had it in the bag against David, but is fucked against CT. Anyways, the elimination doesn't seem like one that is normal for the challenge, though we do know eating challenges are more incorporated into dailies and finals instead of eliminations. Anyways, Shane loses against CT, and we have a somber moment between Darrell and Leah. Shane really didn't have much of an edit on this season, but I found him a bit more funny this season, as he had his likable and somewhat middle-of-the-road moments. I think he wasn't as overshadowed as he was on prior seasons, despite having a similar edit, because the cast in this season is so much smaller than it is on the other seasons. But he himself was not the most memorable person overall on the season when it's all said and done. I have a lot of notes on the next episode, and potentially the one after that, too. Katie is still annoyed with Veronica, and Julie is still annoyed with Coral, and the two women are essentially complaining to one another about their predicament. Twist and Shoot is the next challenge, where you have to shoot pinballs at targets, which has their faces on it from a very high platform. And I do enjoy this challenge. I think it's a 24th platform, if I remember correctly. I don't know for sure about that. As they're spinning when they're trying to shoot as well. We move on to a sudden death run, which involves Cyrus and Abram, and there's a woman's sudden death run as well, with Christina and Coral. Road Rules wins for the 5th time in a row, and Veronica volunteers to go into the Inferno, where Katie says that she'll go in, so she won't have to go in next time. Leah nominates herself to go in, since she was told to not do it, or the challenge, and Julie is fighting to not go in, which Cora is tired of, since she has volunteered herself over and over again, where Julie has not proven herself in challenges or the Inferno, and Julie is trying to get out of being in the Inferno. Julie is chosen to go in by the real world over Leah, and Katie will never go in by the road or the real worlders. And Julie is trying to change it by getting Katie voted in as the other option. So, yeah, it's a very messy situation with the real worlders right now. Julie ends up snapping when they have to choose who to save and things aren't going her way, and she blames all on Coral. She mentions that Coral needs to shut her mouth, and Coral yells that she better not talk to her like that again, and Julie is tired of Coral's quote-unquote intimidation. Coral has to be taken to another room, and she is screaming because she is so pissed off by the caringness of Julie, though she doesn't use those words. And Julie consistently rants about Coral's voice driving her crazy as hell. The votes are officially done with Veronica and Julie going in to the Inferno, and Coral tells Veronica in front of everyone to take Julie out. Mike tells Coral not to do that, but Coral doesn't give a fuck if she's giving the other team the edge, since she's tired of Julie and she wants her out. She tells Mike and her teammates that Julie got that one for free, and the next one she will have to pay for. So if she wants to come for her, she needs to pay for it. Or pay to get sent for her. Julie is now glad because this finally gives Coral a reason to hate her, according to Julie, though I'm pretty sure she had many reasons to hate her beforehand, and some of it had to do with her behind the scenes actions that Melissa explained in season 6. So she tells Mike and her teammates, sorry, I'm reading the wrong notes. Anyways, Julie is telling David that she will wrestle Cora to get this over with, since guys handle things like normal and it ends. Well, girls, they just do all this talking and blah 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 bullshit that's coming out of Julie's mouth. David ends up telling Cora this, and she knows that Julie is trying to provoke her to get her up and to get her sent home. And Cora doesn't wrestle people, she beats bitches up! And it's just a great quote. Julie ends up going into the room that Cora is in to chant and to get Cora out, and Cora tells her that she needs to pay for the next one, since she got the prior one for free, which I love that saying as well. Julie rants that she's been bullied for 2 weeks, and Cora tells her that she looks crazy as hell. Julie calls her passive aggressive as she wants to fight like a man, and now Cora wants to kick her ass, since she knows that she will choke her and be sent home if they wrestle. And we have a great soundbite from Cora, or another one, where she mentions that 132 double D boob will kick Julie's ass, and Julie will go home in a gurney, and Cora will go home in handcuffs. The guys tell Julie that this isn't a good idea, and CT tells her that Cora will kick her ass, and she's never been in a fight before, so she better not get in one now. Julie doesn't like the person that she has turned into being in the house, and Dave can tell that she has a defeatist attitude, which is not good going into a possible elimination. Balcony swing is the next challenge, where they have to swing down side to side to get all of their flags. Leah is not partaking in the challenge again due to heights, and the producer is not allowing it, and her team won't be penalized for it, which is the same thing that happened in the last challenge. Leah is not partaking. Okay, said that already. So moving on, Veronica talks about a plan to get Katie into the Inferno, and that everyone should throw the Inferno to her, i.e. Veronica, so they can get Katie in and out of there. For some reason, Veronica tells Coral this, who then tells Mike. Katie notices that no one is talking to her, and everyone is acting very weirdly, while seeing Abram joking around as he throws the challenge really has her feelings hurt, and he's just being obnoxious about it. The real world wins it, with CT and Veronica winning the life shield, though everyone is making fun of how it was all thrown, which pisses Katie off even more. Abram and a few others decide to wear the real world colors to go into the elimination, clearly showing their support against Katie, and it really pisses Katie off, since it's just another layer of disrespect added to the entire situation. Julie cries in prayer and really does not like what is happening to her, despite Julie getting the match that she actually wanted. The elimination is called Stretch-a-thon, where they have to walk on a treadmill with itching powder on them, though Katie notices that her team put less itching powder on Julie compared to herself. Cora is yelling for Katie to win, and Mike is telling Cora that it is uncalled for, causing the two of them to fight while the elimination is happening. And since the elimination is at the house, some of them go back from the house and to the elimination, and they're kind of arguing in the in-between part of this. Veronica and the other road warriors are also refusing to cheer for Katie in the elimination. Julie wants to wind up the speed, and Katie curses Julie off for wanting to speed it up, and mentions that Cora is nothing compared to her, so Julie better be careful. The 3 hours pass, and they have to jump rope as the tiebreaker, and Julie ends up losing over Katie. What do I even need to say about Julie this season? Her fight with Cora is definitely very legendary and added a lot of great goodness in the season. But you definitely saw a lot of her Karenness throughout the season. I didn't like her messing with Veronica's harness in the very first challenge, and she definitely has some of that dangerous Karen mentality that she apparently showed in Homecoming, and her antics just get old after a while, and she's very similar to Beth, but I don't feel like Beth is as chaotic and damaging and as much of a Karen as Julie is, and I feel like she's a lot less self-aware than Beth is, so it kind of takes some of the fun out of it. Leah speaks to Cora about how awful CT was on the Real World Paris season and how mean and vicious he really is, and we move on to CT speaking to David about how Leah needs to go since she is very weak. Leah is seeing the change between her interactions with CT and how he has changed, though it is sandwiched between CT showing that he hasn't changed and still really doesn't like Leah. Doral is giving Katie her props for doing well in the elimination and smoking while on the treadmill. Fallen Angel is the challenge where some of them have to sit on the platform above water, though the other team have to swim and climb on the rope to pull someone down. Leah is actually given permission to compete in this one, and CT is not hiding his doubt about her before the challenge, which pisses her off. I don't have any thoughts one way or another pertaining this challenge. Road Rules wins the challenge, and the Road Rules nominates Darrell and Timmy into the Inferno since they are the strongest and they really want to knock out someone from the real world. And the real worlders decide that David and Cyrus need to go into the Inferno since neither one of them have been in yet. David and Timmy are sent into the Inferno by the other team, and Katie asks the team to be respectful of her, and she be respectful of them for the rest of the team and the rest of the time of the season, since they all are a team and they need one another to win. CT and Leah end up arguing where he tells her that she has not contributed to the team at all in the season, and he is speaking to the team about how they should throw the lifesaver so Leah can be sent home, and she remembers why she hated him for 6 months back on their season. Leah tells David that there's no way she's going to just throw the lifesaver just so she could go home like nothing. Veronica is plotting yet again on how they can all throw the lifesaver to get Katie into elimination, and this is just after the Road Rulers had that really nice conversation where it seemed like they all had a resolve. Mike and Kendall are getting closer and closer and are compatible kissers, or at least according to Kendall, and I really don't care for this content, but at this point it's kind of setting up the pride before the fall. The Lifesaver Challenge is called Saturn Ballet, where they have to drive a car into a specific spot, and it reminds me of the challenge that they did in A Battle for a New Champion, but it was shockingly more interesting there than it was here. Leah and Kendall win the lifesavers, and Kendall is shocked that she did not know about the plan to give Timmy the lifesaver to get Katie up, but the team is mad at her, since if she uses it, Tim stays and she will go. Though Mike tells her that she's played for herself, so saving herself with the lifesaver is the move that she should make, according to him. Despite her showman not wanting it, Kendall does use the lifesaver on Timmy, causing her to go into the elimination instead, which pisses Mike off. Mike really shows his ass here, opening the hole and everything, because he comes off as horrendous here. And he is so offended that she lied, where he rants about her being a liar and such, and it's just so ridiculous. He now wants her to go home, and they're literally arguing as she is doing the elimination, which is called Brick by Brick, where they have to bring their bricks to a different destination as they are walking on a wooden bridge. Leah and CT overshadow Mike and Kendall with the arguing as those two start arguing during the elimination, and he's telling her to hurry the fuck up, yo, and they are going in on one another. Coral is telling Mike to calm the hell down, and Katie is ranting about Veronica. Leah loses the elimination over Kendall, and Leah is disappointed that Darrell didn't say anything in the elimination, where he does try to justify himself afterwards, saying that he can't handle arguing with a man, or it will get physical, but she just kind of just walks off. Leah ends up being a one-season wonder, and a part of me is and isn't shocked by this. Her panic attacks were severe, to the point where she was hospitalized, and I could see just production not wanting to deal with that. And she didn't have the biggest personality, but we did see her argue with CT, so there was that fire in her. Not the worst one-season wonder, but not the best either. Okay, so she apparently came back in All-Stars 2, and I did not recognize her whatsoever, so yeah. The Inferno nominations are done right after the elimination and before the challenge. Coral is immediately in the Inferno since she's the final woman on the Real Worlders, so it's the Road Rulers that have to decide, where Veronica and Katie both volunteer to go into the Inferno. Coral wants to choose Katie to be the other person she goes against, but the entire team wants Veronica to be in the Inferno since it's the agreement that they made throughout the entire season where they keep Katie out of the Inferno. Mike and Cyrus are steamrolled by CT and David, though it might not have been as much of a steamroll as the edit made it seem, since Mike starts justifying the choice afterwards. But anyway, CT and David push for Veronica to go in, and we see Mike and Coral arguing again about how they chose Katie over Coral. Window washing is the final challenge, where they have to wash windows as they go down and look at the 6 numbers to unlock the combination. Road Rules wins the challenge, where Veronica and Coral both win the lifesavers, so both of the nominees are definitely changing. Coral and Veronica are thrilled that they saved their asses, and Katie knows that she's going into the Inferno, where she uses Timmy's deodorant only for it to not be deodorant. Coral is enjoying the power of sending someone into the Inferno, and she tells David that she's sending him into the Inferno, and he can't even complain because he's wanted her gone the entire season. Smell You Later is the final Inferno, where they have to sit in a bunch of gross, smelly things, which David and Katie are sent into. Katie wins the Inferno, and David is sent home. I found him to be a fun enough and solid enough competitor and character on this season. I did like his dynamic with CT throughout the season. He had a snark here and there, and he did fit in with a lot of the cast, despite only playing in the 3rd season when it wasn't really the challenge yet. I'm looking forward to see what he will do in the Gauntlet too. Katie decides to confront Veronica as soon as the elimination takes place or concludes, and she is that Veronica is a stupid bitch, a slut, a whore, and a skank. And Veronica at first barely reacts to Katie, as she is still pretty much topless and she is trying to cover her boobs. But she keeps on approaching Katie, and I think Katie smushes her face. Veronica then yells at Katie, "Better stay away from her!" And Mike has to hold Katie back, since she wants to hit Veronica. Veronica is claiming that Katie should be lucky that she is still there, and that she cannot hit Katie, obviously due to the rules of the show. All that happened before David officially leaves the house, and I forgot that he didn't even leave yet at this point. The final is called the 7 Deadly Sins, where they have to complete in 7 parts of the challenge, which are obviously based on the 7 Deadly Sins. I'm not going to go through all the steps, since I never do that for the competitions in any of the shows that I cover, since the competitions are always the least important part of a show when I'm watching and reviewing it. So the Real Worlders know that because they have half of the people in the final, they go twice as fast as the Road Rulers. They lose the key for a bit during one of the first 3 parts. Gluttony obviously involves an eating challenge, and the Road Rulers gain a lead, though it doesn't take long for the Real Worlders to take a lead during the next part or 2. They have to do a Sudoku puzzle, which always makes or breaks a team in the final, and Road Rules wins yet again over the Real World. Cyrus was the older man of the season, and a decent amount of people did throw shade at him about his age, and like I mentioned, they never did the same thing to Mark during this time, despite them being the same age. Cyrus is definitely funny throughout a lot of the season, despite not having the hugest edit, though he was inconsistent as a competitor. Mike kind of had a repeated storyline this season, as we got through the Fallout official match with Trishelle ending early on, which was a huge storyline last season, and then him getting with Kendall throughout the season, though he was very unlikable with how he handled her this season as well. It's easily the worst showing of Mike from a character point of view. CT is definitely the rookie of the year or season, as he won a bunch of lifesavers and was a strong teammate for his team. And while the quote-unquote Wookiee treatment that the show is infamous for wasn't really a thing at this point of time, he was not seen as a newbie, and he was treated like any other long-standing veteran. He did get into drama with Leah at the end, but he was overall pretty calm. Coral easily had her best performance in her career yet from a competitor and a character point of view. Her feuds with Trishelle and Julie were brilliant. Her most quotable lines come from this season, and she redeemed herself from her poor performance in the challenges last season. Veronica was really at her most cutthroat yet this season, where she was really plotting how to throw several challenges to get Katie sent into elimination, and she really came into her own as a player, while offering some drama and bringing some good commentary throughout the season. She also won a decent amount of the lifesavers and even some of the other challenges, so she also improved in that element too. Timmy remained pretty humorous throughout the season, and while he didn't really have much of a story in the season, he brought a lot of humor to the show whenever he was shown, and he was one of the better challengers in the season from a competitive point of view. Kendall is someone who I'm kind of mixed on. She did have her showmance with Mike, which was a pretty big storyline, but it really wasn't that interesting, and she really wasn't notable on a challenge point of view. She was a lot more interesting in the All-Star series, and I am looking forward to how she's on there and me covering it. But overall, I am somewhat not shocked that she was never on the flagship again after this. Katie just did whatever she did on the last season, but she was a lot more spiteful and was a better challenger in the season, where we saw her feud with Veronica play out throughout the entire season, and even her feud with her team getting closer to the Road Rulers, and really brought a lot of presence throughout the season with a huge underdog run. Holly was a middle of the road presence on her prior 2 seasons, and she continued on that path here, though there's a likable presence to her as well. At the same time, she's never someone who's going to contribute to the storylines and doesn't really stand out much as a competitor, strategist, or a player, so I'm fine with this being her last season, despite overall finding her pleasant. Darrell did get a bigger edit to the season, as he had his showings with Leah throughout the season, which wasn't interesting, but he was a lot funnier here too compared to last season, and you can tell that he wasn't putting it on like some of the others while being a good teammate in the challenges. Christina is fine enough. She was okay at the challenges, and she had somewhat of a middle of the road edit, but she really isn't memorable at all, and I see why she never came back after this. In general, the rookies this season outside of CT were very weak and unnotable. Abram is still his zany, crazy self, but it seemed like he toned it down a bit on the season compared to last season, or that's at least how it was edited. He definitely had his playful feuds and whatnot, and was a solid enough challenger in the challenges. He was solid overall in my opinion here. I couldn't find the reunion anywhere online, so I don't have any commentary on that, unfortunately. I feel like this was the season where they actually got it. They realized that they needed a consistent and workable format that was good for the gameplay, good for the drama, and good for the pacing of not only the episodes, but of production. And they also got it in the fact that you bring a decent amount of people who are on the last season onto this season, so the storylines and drama can continue on and things have a sort of consistency, which was sort of missing from the few seasons before that. Overall, there's just so many iconic moments in the season that are still well remembered today. And while I feel like they kind of got it with the Gauntlet, I just feel like the season did everything a lot better. And you could tell that they really found their first stars around this point of time, regarding the stars and the faces of their show, and they chose the good ones. Ultimately, the show really stopped evolving when it comes to the immediate format at around this point of time, and we're getting closer to the end of Era 1, where we will see a lot of the consistent forces here a few more times before we see some new phases. At the same time, the next season goes backwards a lot regarding going back to no eliminations and going back to some of that janky formatting that made some of the earlier seasons a bit inconsistent. But overall, this season is eons better than all the seasons that I've reviewed of the show so far, and I can't believe I'm getting closer to the end of Era 1. Thank you everyone for supporting me in this journey, and I'll be back with something else very soon. Bye!